Hello and welcome to the Madhouse podcast. Back from Egypt. I've been away on holiday for a couple of weeks, and over a week ago I came back from my holiday in Egypt. It was a great holiday. Went with the family, had a really nice time. I think I've visited all of the easily accessible African countries at this end of the African continent. I've been to Tunisia and Egypt and Turkey and Morocco now, and I think that's most of the touristy ones until you get down to the other end of the continent where you've got the jungle and those sort of safari areas. So I really enjoyed it. Had a really nice time. One of the things I like to do when I travel abroad is to actually kind of meet local people and get into the area where people actually live. I'm not quite such a big fan of doing the massive touristy things that everyone does, like the pyramids and those sort of things. So instead, what I think I prefer is to go and see how people actually live and meet real people, and I really enjoy that. And I found the Egyptian people to be very friendly. They certainly do drive a hard bargain when you shop with them. But of course, everyone who's ever travelled to those sort of countries knows that. But that's fun. It can get a bit tiresome when it takes sort of an hour to get down a quarter of a mile of street. But nonetheless, no, really had a nice time. And we also had plenty of sunbathing and swimming and drinking, as you usually do on that sort of holiday as well. So came back very refreshed, ready to get on with some good work. And this is the podcast. So what have we got? I wanted to talk about first playbymail.net, who run the Suspense and Decision online magazine, which is not easy for me to say with a speech impediment, but brilliant magazine, and the editor there is doing fantastic work to try and revitalise the hobby, and something I very strongly believe in. I think that Play by Mail is growing again and has its best years yet to come, and I'm looking forward to seeing and helping with that. So one of the things we're doing is I'm trying to promote playbymail.net and Suspense and Decision magazine. Fully recommend you guys go find them on Facebook, join up with their Facebook page, and then get copies of the magazine when it comes out and have a good read through it. You'll notice that there are going to be some feature articles about Dungeonworld. The editor is now playing Dungeonworld and is going to chronicle his experiences, his adventures, which I think everyone should find interesting. Really looking forward to it, and I think it's going to be great. One of the best things, of course, about what's going on at the moment is we're seeing lots of new players coming in. So the podcast seems to be getting a fair bit of interest, and quite a number of people have joined from looking at the podcast. Suspense and Decision magazine is driving people here, and that's brilliant. And we seem to just generally be picking up from a re-interest in the kind of retro and traditional forms of gaming that have quietened down over the last decade or so. I think perhaps, as I've said before, there's only so much that you can do with kind of video games and online gaming. In the end, those things are great fun and everyone has a lot of time doing it. But I think when you've done so much of something, you begin to look for something else, and we're one of the something else, aren't we? So that's good. I've seen lots of emails from people saying, I'm looking forward to the podcast and they're waiting for notifications on the podcast. Well done, guys. Brilliant. I'm really glad that you're enjoying it. I really like doing it. And as long as you keep liking what I'm publishing online, I will keep publishing it, and hopefully it will be fun for everyone and useful and informative. And may it go from strength to strength. One of the things I'd like to do in the future is have some guests on and have some sort of question and answer chat about this game and the general hobby, and even the wider kind of area of culture, movies and TV stuff and video games and the like, comics, all the sort of things that a lot of us are interested in. I know not everyone who does turn-based gaming is into all these things, but there is definitely some commonality of interest, I think. So I also wanted to talk about something of what's going on within the game of Dungeonworld. Players will know that there's been a change of ruler, and that has caused some upheaval, and there's a lot of distress going on in the Kingdom of Bereni at the moment. One of those areas of distress is the Red Knights, who've come out of nowhere. Nobody knows quite who they are, and have uprisen and caused a number of battles between them and adventurers and forces and armies of the Crown. They seem to be being beaten back, but they are winning in some areas, or certainly holding their own. And worse still, in some areas, some of the kind of peasant armies and local militia and local groups have actually sided with the Red Knights, which has been difficult. And I think adventurers have found that a challenge. Now, I know that adventurers are doing quite well in the areas where they had to fight them, but the problem is those are kind of pinpoint areas, but there's a wider problem going on in the kingdom. Definitely there's some underground rumbling, and there are rumours that that some notable characters are very unhappy with the way things have gone and don't support the ruler. Now, you don't see that on any of the discussion groups because everybody is very crown loyal and says, we're going to support what's going on, but behind the scenes, power moves are happening. Now, whether that will lead to some sort of big conflict, or even, the words I've heard a couple of times, civil war. I don't actually know. It's really down to players and characters to drive. I have my part to play with the NPCs and what's going on behind the scenes, but I don't know where it's going to go. It's as interesting for me as the GM as it is, I think, for some of the players involved. We will see, but I think there's a big announcement coming in the next 2 or 3 podcasts. I think there's going to be one that's going to rock the game. Now, I can't preempt it because I'm not sure, but I think there's going to be one that's really going to rock the game, and that will be really exciting. So I also wanted to talk about some of the things that I've been doing that aren't game related, just because it's a hobby where we share a lot of interests, and I wanted to talk to you about a couple of movies. One I've seen and one I'm looking forward to see. So the one I've seen recently was Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and I wanted to talk about that because I know a lot of you have similar interests to me, and I thought you might want to know, if you haven't seen it, is it worth seeing? And the answer is I'm not sure. It had some really good moments. There were some great monsters. There were some great spooky scenes, which I always love in a good horror movie. Those scenes where you go, whoa, that's real creepy. And I really liked the one in the hospital, the mental hospital, where I don't want to give a spoiler really, but there's a big, fat, kind of monstrous looking lady who is a really unusual monster, who kills in a really unusual sort of way. And it's a very creepy scene. I liked it a lot. And there's a number of other really good moments. There are really some classic moments to see, and it's probably worth seeing just for those. But I didn't think the plot held together well. It seemed a bit derivative, it seemed a bit rushed, and it didn't seem to know what it wanted to be. It jumps between kind of Stranger Things and It and Creepshow and a whole bunch of other kind of ideas, and that might sound great to you because those are all good things. But I thought it was a bit haphazard, a bit mishmashed. Nevertheless, I think it's worth a watch, but it could have been much better, I think. In regards to It 2, the sequel to the It movie, I was looking forward to seeing this because I loved the first one and I love the book, but the reviews of the second movie are awful, and the more I know, they're people I broadly trust for reviews as well. So looking at it, I'm thinking, I'm not sure now if I want to see it, but I suspect it'll be a bit like Scary Stories in that I bet it'll have some great video moments, some great cinematography, some really interesting spooky scenes, but it sounds like they've tried to do too much and perhaps gone outside of the source material. So we'll see. I haven't seen it. I don't know for sure. I'll let you know once I've seen it. The other thing I wanted to talk about, most of you already know, but there's one or two that may not, and it's worth telling you. Go and watch The Boys on Amazon Prime. I mean, that is a brilliant superhero TV series, and I just thought it was absolutely amazing. If you've read the comic, you already know it's a great story, but they carry it through to the TV series so well. There are some changes, but it holds all of the theme and feeling that you would expect. People who don't even like superhero TV series are going and saying, wow, this is great. And you will binge watch the whole thing, I promise you. And then you'll be dying for the next season. So if you haven't seen The Boys, go and watch it. You will love it. Finally, I wanted to talk about the short story, well, it's not really a short story, kind of novel I've been trying to write for a while. It's called Henchman. It's about the henchman that works for supervillains, the ones you always see in the background in the sort of supervillain teams, the kind of generic henchmen types. It follows the progress of a man who first becomes a henchman and how he works for different supervillains and what he experiences and his kind of adventures along the way. I think it's a little bit different. I've not read anything quite like it from anyone else, so I hope you will enjoy it. I will put the links both to the online chapters. I've written, I don't know, I think about a dozen chapters of it so far, and then there's a couple of chapters that are turned into an audio chapter, so you can go and listen to them if you can stand my voice and would prefer that to reading them. Either way, please do check them out. I'd love to know if you like them or not. I'm more likely to get the thing finished if somebody's actually reading it, so brilliant. But a bit of self-promotion. I hope you'll accept my apologies for that. So that's pretty much everything for now. I'm looking forward to doing the next podcast. I will try and do another one or two over the weekend, and until then, see you later.